Hi, everyone. Karma Sullivan here, Heart to Heart Medium. And today I'm very excited to introduce Jason Hopcus. I hope I said that right, Jason. Is that
You
how you
did.
say the last name? Thank you.
Correct.
I've never met Jason before. And so I'm very excited to have him here to talk about his new book, Boom, Get Unstuck and Move Forward. Also, to talk about his life. I love talking to people who've overcome hardships and they have moved to bettering society. And I think Jason is a prime example of that. Jason is head of National Alliance for the Mentally Ill's Arapahoe and Douglas County, two of the largest counties in Colorado. And if you know me, I have a passion for helping people. Mental illness is so critical in our society today to talk about it, to be open about it. I think mental illness is even a harder subject than death. As a medium, I can see that. And so I'm really excited. You're a certified life coach. And I just wanted to get to know you a little better. So, Jason, welcome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much. Tell me a little bit about yourself, what I didn't touch on.
Well, thank you for having me, Carm. It's a pleasure to virtually connect with you. I know we've connected
I'm
via
meeting
email and over the phone, but to put a face to this is certainly an honor. So, a little bit about me, and thank you for the plug for my book, Get Unstuck and Move Forward with Your Life. I really come to the work that I'm doing from my own history of what I will lovingly call a breakthrough, but I want to be clear, it was nothing short of a breakdown more than a decade ago, which really set me on this path of recognizing that all of us have setbacks in life. I like to say everyone struggles, and recognizing that, from that struggle, there is a shared experience among us as humans that I just think that we don't talk about enough. We get in the headspace, something happens or is going on, and, we kind of keep it inside of us and don't really recognize that, there are other people that are on these journeys, perhaps further down the path or behind you on the path, that really can help illuminate how we navigate life's ups and downs if we just talk to one another. So, you mentioned my work at NAMI, which I came to after my breakthrough. My parents had taken a family to family course, and my mom said, "Hey, I think they have some support for people who struggle with some mental health challenges. You should check it out." And I remember that November evening, stepping into those rooms and recognizing, while my story was very different than the others there, I did felt welcome and I didn't feel alone. And I felt like it was a place that I could process some of the things that I had been through and was still going through. And that sort of led the way for me to then go on to become, a board member of NAMI Arapahoe Douglas Counties. I was a state executive director here in Colorado for a time. So I've worn a lot of hats at NAMI over the years, but my work is really rooted in the foundation of connection. I also have an organization I founded in 2018 called Connection Project that simply is about strengthening and deepening connection to ourselves and others. So my work has really been framed around how do we just better connect with each other?
I think it's one of my greatest things I like to get on my soapbox about lately. It's about connection because we're all through the phone system, through the computers. We're so disconnected right now, and that is the problem in society. I feel, along with mental illness, which drives two of them kind of
Right.
go hand in hand. People need people, and I create tribes of people in my community through having a circle groups and connection, the biggest thing ever. So tell me a little bit more about what got you into this in the sense of why did you feel passionate to start this whole connection project? Tell me a little bit more about your journey on that.
That's a great question. So, Connection Project was really birthed out of a dream that I had that was very prophetic, kind of during the midst of my breakdown. And, statistically, I had a very big life in my previous life. I worked in a family road construction business and had a pretty significant real estate career in some subsidiary businesses, and, really had excelled in a way that many people never will, and had achieved. I always say I peaked too soon. I went to the mountaintop early, and descended that just as quickly. And quite frankly, Carm, not to be too graphic about it, but most people that came from the world that I did, men specifically, would have taken their lives. And
Oh,
that was certainly a consideration for me for more than a year as I was really struggling. And, it was that mustard seed of faith that really moved me forward in recognizing that if I make it out of this, like I have to use my voice to help other people. So that really laid this foundation of service and having a heart of service, which has a whole nother host of things that we could go into that comes along with that. But recognizing that I am here for a reason, and that reason is to help others. So hopefully they don't have to struggle or end up in the spot that I did, which was epically catastrophic. I mean, I will lovingly also say that I lost my money, my mind, and my way. And that was a pretty big fall from the top of the mountain. Connection Project was really birthed, years before it actually came into existence, from this concept that everyone struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew from my work at NAMI that we, so beautifully serve family members and loved ones that are impacted by what I would consider chronic or persistent mental illness, people who will likely have, over the course of their lives, some significant struggle. And really, where it left off the conversation is, how do we support those people that have lost a loved one or a job or a relationship, kind of those ups and down things that we all go through in course of life, and recognizing, I think that we can do better about getting people resourced. So Connection Project was really birthed to serve everyone. And what we quickly learned is you can't serve everyone. So
Right.
from that understanding, we started looking at what are our most vulnerable populations that really struggle with high anxiety, depression, suicide rates, substance use and misuse, and really kind of took it upon ourselves to study those groups more in depth. And what we identified is the responder community, youth and teens specifically, new moms, middle-aged men. There are quite a few populations that have really statistically high rates of struggle. And what that has morphed into is us building, tools that create systems of resources for them, and then marketing them in a very significant way with these large-scale social impact campaigns.
Wow. I just love your passion, first off. And
Thank you.
through darkness, there is no light. So you have to go through that dark spell, the soul. I call it the dark night of the soul.
Of course.
And when I do my work for people who have lost loved ones to suicide, and they want connection to understand why, or understand, are they okay?
Right.
And so my passion is to connect people in the afterlife, but I would rather do it in life, not
Right.
afterlife.
Right.
And through this connection project, tell me, like, when they come to see you or someone comes, is it somebody coming to this location? Is it a location? Is it a website? Tell me how you
The
get in contact.
Connection Project's website is really simple. It's realpeoplereallife.org. But the social impact campaigns that we've built for ourselves and other clients really look like serving these vulnerable populations. So I did a tremendous amount of work with a national organization that supports emergency responders, which includes everything from medical professionals to wildland fire. So it was a broad spectrum of support that we offered there. But what I'm really passionate about is work that we're doing with funding through NAMI currently, is work with youth and teens through an initiative we have called Nobody's Perfect Community.
I love that.
And, that was built on 6 solid years of research working with youth and families and really understanding, like, what are the challenges that they're facing. And you had mentioned something earlier that really pings with me around this resonance of connection, and that we're all really seeking that. And I think we've moved into this world of implied connection. We've got a device, we're talking to somebody,
Yeah,
it feels
exactly.
like we're connected. And it's not. Like,
It's
there is
not.
no replacement for one-on-one or face-to-face connection. And I think the pendulum will swing back. I think we are all tiring of that. And it's not a youth problem, but it is something that has impacted our youth in a very significant way. And I'm so inspired to work with those audiences.
It's funny you mentioned that. I was listening to some podcast the other day, and I don't remember what it was, but they were saying on this podcast, like, the older population will listen to the podcast. The youth will watch the podcast because they don't have connection.
Right.
So I'm like, wow. So that,
It's interesting you mentioned that, because there's a guy that I follow, and he normally has video podcasts, and the guy that edits videos for both of us said, you should listen to this podcast of Joe's. And so I listened to it, and it was one of his older episodes that was just an audio only podcast. And I found myself, as I was listening to it, I was like, gosh, I really wish I could see the face and, like, who's talking at the time.
Yeah.
And like I even felt that lack of connection, and I don't love looking at myself on screen,
Me
doing
either.
these sort of things. But I think there is a real human element to it that we are starved for. And
Yeah.
I don't want to vilify technology completely, because there are some wonderful gifts it's given us. But one of the things that I think it has done that we're not as out and proud about is it is robbing us of connection, true
Well,
connection.
it's funny because I mean, I'm a lot older than you, and I see the difference in how people communicate, how they respond. Without having that one-on-one, you don't read the body language, you're not seeing the face. And texting is one of my things I hate. I do it because sometimes it's just easier. But people can misread a text faster than hello and goodbye. And your text could be very light and bright, but somebody else whose filter is different, they read it the way they want to hear it or
Right.
what they're looking for.
Well, and the other thing that I think we dismiss or don't fully understand is the access that we have given to people
Yeah,
through how we communicate today. I
yeah,
mean, especially with young people today, their ability to disconnect from being attached to people that have access to them. Like, I think about bullying as a topic.
oh,
When we grew up, if you wanted to bully somebody, you had to call their home phone or go to their house or meet them on the schoolyard.
you have your face involved.
And today you can do it anonymously behind a screen and really kind of do some life destroying stuff to people without really thinking about what the real impact is. So I think there are some significant dangers in how we communicate with people that, I'm hopeful we will swing back to something that feels a little more connective.
I am finding in my community of like-minded people who are more into the spiritual connections, they are hungry for tribe, and I call it tribe. Like-minded people who have ideology similar, or they just want to discuss a topic that they are fervent about and they have fervent about, and they can talk about it with other people who may agree or disagree. And it's an amazing this group I have, it's a circle through spirituality, and it's mostly all women, but these women are like dedicated to showing up and being in person. It's a much more connected group in person. I also have a Zoom group, but the in person is so profoundly different.
Right.
And it's funny because the Zoomers want to come to the in person when they can, if they can. Some are all over the country, so it's not an option. But if we can get more connection in the community, and what I love, I mean, your connection project, you're hitting those groups of people, and especially teenagers. Anxiety. I get so many teenagers, parents bring to me to help them work on anxiety in the sense of spiritually we look at it.
Right.
And I'm not a therapist. I call myself a spiritual advisor. And I just help them learn how to breathe and how to connect to others and give them life work. Yeah, yeah, I think you
Right.
should go do this. But you
And
know,
isn't it amazing? Sometimes those simple reminders can make such a difference.
you know, growing up, when you're with people, you learn how to be around people. But if you're sheltered in the sense of through your phone and not connected, you have a hard time reading people. And when I say reading people, I'm meaning like understanding what they're truly saying when they're talking to you,
Right.
and then also understanding the cues of just their body. And I think that's what we're missing. And I think also division is one that, it's a horrible thing right now. And I like people to come to the middle. I'm a middle person. Let's talk.
Right. Right.
Throw
And
me
it's
out at
amazing how
God.
far that pendulum again has swung to where
Yeah.
people think it's okay to be really bolstered in their beliefs, and there's no space for any kind of mid ground. And I think, and that's on both sides of the equation.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
100%. Because
And I think it's really unfortunate that experiment alone has taken the humanity out of a lot of these things. But it's interesting, the work that we're doing with youth was built on, like I said, 6+ years of like research and survey. And we did a pretty significant survey project last year for Douglas County. And it's interesting. The one statistic that stuck out with me the most is when we asked youth how they would rate their mental health, 72% of them reported their mental health as fair or poor.
that's
And you,
scary. That is so
it's
scary.
it's scary and staggering. And then you ask the parents, the same question about their perception of their youth mental health, and it was about 30% of them would have rated it as fair poor. So I think there's even a disconnection that's happening in the home, which is why, we have our Nobody's Perfect podcast that is having these conversations to educate people around the things that youth are struggling with. But we just have to talk more. Like, I really think that
Yeah.
it's imperative that we do more of this.
Converse. I mean, what I think too is the kids I see, they think they're alone. And there's so many more out there. And so I try to connect to others. Oh, I have somebody I know who's gone through this. Let's
Right.
connect you to. In your youth program, tell me, how are you doing? Just podcasts? Are you doing group settings? Tell me what you're doing with that.
That's a great question. So it's nobodiesperfect.community is the website. It is a digital hub of clinically approved resources. I have a team of clinicians that vetted the resources that are on there. It's topic focused by things that we validated with research with youth and families that they're struggling with. It's a place for youth, parents, caregivers, providers, and educators to find resources, the things that they're struggling with. And then we also have a podcast series that addresses a lot of these conversations of the same name, Nobody's Perfect, that really is the driver for one versus the other. And then we have, we've had 1,100 radio spots on Cozy 101 here in Colorado in the last year. We've made, 7 million impressions doing the work that we're doing. We currently have about 11,000 listeners an episode to our podcast. So it tells me people are interested in what we're doing and the appetite they have for this sort of content. But at its foundation, it's really about how do we more simply connect somebody from I am struggling to I got connected to resources. Like that's my job.
And the interesting thing too is kids, I almost feel like it has to go into the school system because, and this is just my opinion, is if having people understand that we're all connected and we all have fears. And a lot of the bad things that happen through, with mental health and through like the bullying is they're fearful kids and they want to feel better. So this is how they react to it. So
Well, the word we use today that is kind of the buzzword of the moment is kids are less resilient today. And I
yeah,
do think that's absolutely true. And I think, there were a few gifts of COVID, namely that we're talking about mental health in a way that we haven't. And as an experiment, it proved we could do this with technology.
right.
But, the downside is I don't think we've even yet seen the iceberg we're facing with younger generations and the impacts that the pandemic had on all of us. And I'm not an alarmist about things like that. But I mean,
I think you're
when you
right.
pull kids out of really, integral times of their socialization and isolate them, I think it results in some pretty catastrophic outcomes. And kids today do not appear to be as resilient. And I think there are a number of factors. But the thing that I will tell you alarms me the most is a decade ago when I started doing this work, my kid struggles with depression or with anxiety or like a thing. And today the acuity is so much different in what kids struggle with. It's my kid has depression and anxiety and they don't want to go to school and they're being bullied and they're, practicing self-harm and they're on their phone or they're gaming all the time. And now they started experimenting with marijuana. Like it's so much more complex that like even knowing where to start to address the needs, like I'm really focused on how do we look at this as a public health crisis, but
Mhm.
at system level change. So, while the tool today is a fabulous tool that we get a lot of accolades for, I'm looking at the next iteration of how do we take technology and integrate AI in to basically take your unique scenario and help you triage. These are the resources that are going to help you with all of the things that you've just described versus the legwork of you having to take our well-vetted resources and still figure out like what's going to be a fit for me because it's too hard.
Are you holding any connection group meetings or anything like that in person? Like, you know how AA meets, da 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 da.
Yeah, no, we don't do anything in person really, primarily because I wanted the capacity to be able to scale. So while this was built as a
Like,
Colorado focused initiative, I mean, I don't think the problems we're facing here are any different than problems kids are facing in Wisconsin or in
right.
California or anywhere else. So, we're really working at this point with the AI modeling we're doing with this, and we've got some pretty awesome demos with this. We're looking at what are our sources of funding to really expand this because what is unique about what we've done is not just building this hub of resources, it's how we've done it. but more importantly, the fact that we have the capacity to market it and get eyes on it and people engage with it. Like, that's really a unique concept even in 2024.
Well, I love what you're doing because it needs to be on a large scale. And then, I mean, my idea, I see it. I mean, for me, what I look at is the intimacy, how to bring intimacy, or, the resiliency is, I think, helps when people are sitting in a group and
Right.
talking. Hey, I had
Right.
that happen to me, and then maybe that's another whole side angle of this.
Well,
Um,
and that's why we were so intentional about not just serving youth. We're also serving parents,
yeah.
caregivers, providers, educators. And the interesting thing is when your kids start struggling, it often shines a spotlight back on the unhealed parts of you or the things
Oh,
that
hello.
maybe you haven't addressed. So, that's my whole other angle of work. We started the
You
conversation
got a
around,
lot going on.
right. We talked about my new book, but really it is
Yeah.
from that sense of struggle and recognizing adults aren't doing great either.
No, I
Like,
will say you're right. I mean, I get a lot of people in here in my office to meet with me because they don't know their purpose. Where am I going? My failures. They're looking at things and they're reflecting. As you get older, you're reflecting on
right,
the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And I mean, it all affects once again back to the mental health of an adult, a child, you know,
right.
um,
Well,
everything.
and what's being reflected back to us, whether you're a youth or an adult of
Yeah.
any age, if you're engaging in social media, you are literally viewing highlight reels of the best moments of people's lives. And you
Oh,
and I both know that's not real world.
you have to call BS on it. It's funny.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
it's from that skewed perspective that I think we are making major decisions about our path in life. So it makes sense that people are coming to you to question these things. Like, I wrote the book, not as a memoir, but sharing kind of my personal story of like rebuilding this life from hell and recognizing, like, I don't think anybody should have to go through what I went through to get the life they want. I also don't fool myself to think that a book is the thing that changes somebody for getting what they want. If it's the thing that can inspire them or be a guidepost to make them have the courage to take a next step, like, wonderful. But it's hard. Life is hard, and I
Life
think as
is
humans,
really
we
hard.
make it messy. We make it messy.
Well, I always feel like I always told my kids nothing's fair in life. And my one daughter would get really mad at me. And I'm like, I'm sorry, it isn't fair. Nothing is fair. You have to
Right,
accept that so you can live a better life.
right.
And resiliency, I try to, for my kids, I have 36, 35, and then 25. And they're all had some messiness in their lives. We had a downfall with financial,
Hmm.
and my kids learned they came kind of from a wealthy type of background. We were upstarts, my husband and I, and then we lost everything in 2009. So our kids got more of a base of reality, which I think helped them all. And I think when you can have a situation that challenges you, it's the only way you're going to grow. And I always
Agreed.
tell people without the darkness, your soul can't just grow with happy flowers and rainbows and lollipops. It has to be where you're struggling. And I tell people, I go, would you rather looking at the other side of it, getting through the bad stuff? Do you like yourself better today than you did before this thing happened?
I can say for me unequivocally, yes. Like, I think, if I had to characterize my former life, which was very big and grand and had all
Mhm.
the things,
Right.
um, you know, it was also very dutiful. I did what I thought was expected of me. I went to college, I worked, I made money, I did all the things. And it wasn't my passion and purpose. Like, my passion and purpose is to serve others, and really recognizing that in service of others, we can still have all the things that we desire and want.
So when
But
you
there's
wait a minute for a second, when you came upon your purpose, think about that. When did it happen? And without you being in crisis, would that purpose have shone its light on you?
absolutely not. Yeah, I think what I had built was not built to last.
Hmm.
I think everything needed to burn to the ground to begin again. And I knew very early on that if I was to survive and make it out, I had to do something to help other people not go through what I went through. So that was pretty early on for me. I would say that was within the first year of my crash and burn.
Did you feel like it in your heart center? Like you knew in your heart?
I don't know that I felt it that profoundly. I think that took more time and work because I was really trying to figure out, like for me, my breakdown was very public. And, friends that I had built over a lifetime that I thought would be there weren't. Like that was really devastating for me. So like
Been there, done that.
unpacking the grief of that literally took a decade. But it was me being on a podcast in the last 2 years as a guest, that there was a question that was asked to me. I don't even remember the question, but I remember my answer of saying, if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't be here. And the life I have today is built from hell.
Right.
And really owning that, like that turned on a different switch for me, because what it also allowed me to do, Carm, and that took 10 years, by the way, to have that awareness. What it also allowed me to do is that there's some traps in being of service also. We move so far down a path to serve others that we often don't realize you have to fill your cup to pour from it. Mm-hmm. So there was some unraveling that came from that awareness too. And then figuring out like, okay, well, like, how do I stop doing that in a way that is not cup filling and really move this into a more full experience that serves me and helps me serve others?
I think what you're saying is, I struggle with, because I'm serving people through my work, and I can get really worn out. And balance is so important.
Right.
And I've had to learn through when I'm really burned out and I can't do the work anymore, and I don't want to lose my gifts of helping others. So I have to step back. So I even, through my work, I try to take off at least 10 days a month, back to back. So they're in one grouping. So I can be my other self, not the spirit's Carm, but, Carm, the human who wants to, live with her family and enjoy her family.
I love that. I mean, and the thing that resonates for me is like, it's 10 days for you, maybe 4 days for somebody else. Yeah. It may be a long weekend that you're unplugged. Like, take your pick. And that's, really what I love about the book is that kind of take your next right step approach. Like I think as humans, we get so wired to climb the whole staircase that we forget you only get up at one step at a time. And,
it's just to walk a journey. It's,
but why are we trying to skip steps?
Because you know what? We all are on a weird mission of fast. That's the other thing. I think people are not learning how to go slow anymore because we can do so much more. It's not where we're sitting in the space and just enjoying looking outside, looking out,
And I struggle with that too. Like, I mean, it's, I just launched a book and it had some great, we're number 3 bestseller and or we're the top bestseller in 3 categories. That's what I was trying to say. But like, I'm already like, well, I could write another book. Like I've got 2 other books I could write. And it's like, well, hold on. It's not even been 1 month.
That's our ego talking to us too. Our ego gets involved. And then what happens is it drives us to, overdo or overwhelm. And I think you have to savor. This book is, by the way, I want to talk about this. I really like it. I really, really like it because it's very sensible. It's very not flowery, not like overly thoughtful. It's perfect in the sense of it's right to the point. And once you do this, you got to look at this. And you also, what I love about it is you can write in it. So I'm kind of giving you what my thoughts are, because as a person who loves books, I don't feel normal unless I have a book near me. And I just love what you put in here, because to me, it's a lot of things I talk about in a reading, but you have them in this book. And I think if people could, if they're wondering if they could make a change, maybe you get this to start moving you forward. And then what happens is you find the next step and then the next step. But it brings, I think, when you can look and be curious about yourself and be honest, that's when change happens.
Right.
It's funny when people tell me things, I listen, but I'm also obstinate, like, I don't want to hear you. And then I take it in slowly. And now as I get older, I'm taking it in quicker, like, okay, Carm, they're right. You don't have to be the obstinate fool here. You got to be open to why. And then you have to look at yourself and go, Why am I doing that? What's the background of that? One of my daughters told me I don't listen to the family when they talk to me because I'm usually preoccupied and I had to go deep in that because I'm like, you know what? At first I was like, eh. And then I'm like, no, you're right. Because when I grew up, my mother was crazy. So my dad gave us the rule that we didn't have to listen to her.
Oh,
So guess what? We were trained well not to listen and not to engage. And so I had to go back to that to break that paradigm. And people have paradigms from the past. And so
oh, for sure.
once you look at that, you're like, okay, now I can go forward and hopefully break that cord. And I think in this book, it's a good way to also reflect on yourself. And if you're honest, if you're willing to look at yourself in a way that I'm not perfect, which none of us are. I also love. I was looking at your. I don't know how to say this. Someone has tried Plutchik's Wheel of Emotion.
Uh-huh. The
I
wheel of
love that. I'm going to talk to you more about that offline because I really want to use that because I just ordered a. I love it because I think emotions. I've always thought the only two real emotions are love and fear, and everything else is a subset
Yeah.
down below, fear, or an up. I call it the up movement set of love, which there's many things: vulnerability, authenticity, joy. But I'm kind of looking
Well,
at
and
this.
we use so many other words because they're easier to digest than fear. You know, like that. That's I'm working with my strategist on this kind of coaching program we're doing for corporate America, and
Oh,
like really the type of people we want to work with, and like working through all of that and recognizing, and the words vulnerability and authenticity and all of that came up. Like, how do you get to the heart of that to really kind of unmask some of these things in the corporate setting? And I said, everything we're talking about here really comes down to the word fear.
mhm.
Like those are the things that hold us back. And I think the more that we can dip our toe in the water, and I love what you shared about your daughter sharing with you, because people are wonderful mirrors for us, whether we like what they're saying or not. If we do hear them and reflect on it, it is a pretty great opportunity to be able to say, oh, that might be something for me to look at. And I encourage anybody who's listening, like, just pay more attention to what your people are saying. People will tell
Well,
you.
yeah, and they do. And it's funny is if you hear it once, you're like, eh. Second
Right.
time, you know what? So when you got to be listening, it's like
Right.
funny. I'll be doing a reading for somebody here, and I'll tell them something very profound. They go, I've heard that twice before. I go, are you listening?
No, they're waiting for the wall to fall on them.
So I say the bricks are coming.
Yeah. The wall's coming down on you. Yeah. And again, I think it goes back to just our propensity for how much can we take on in today's world. I think people are maxed.
Hmm.
I hate that for where we are as a society. But the reality is the best relationship you're going to have in life is the one with yourself. And it's amazing how hard we work at fixing everything and everyone else, and we leave ourselves off the list so often. And I go back
Amen.
to that staircase concept. Like, I think a lot of people don't take steps because they think that small step's not going to be enough. Like, no, it may not be the thing that changes your life, but it may be the thing that leads to the next step or the next
You're,
step that
you're
will.
moving. You're moving forward. Don't get stuck in
Steps are
the.
steps.
It's like putting the I mean, to me, it's like the balance is putting the oxygen mask on to you first, because your kids are. If you can't do it for yourself, your kid is. What are you going to do?
Right.
So I think it's always self-reflection on: am I living my best life? Am I being truthfully honest and who I am today? And what can I do to improve?
Right.
And not in the sense of like, for me, it's like, I know I don't want to forget the F word. I call it fun.
Right.
Because
And not beating yourself up if you didn't make the mark today.
yeah,
We hold ourselves in such high standards that I think that really negates getting to the F word fun that you're talking about.
perfectly imperfect. I mean, perfectly imperfect.
It's interesting. I recently watched this documentary about the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders called America's Sweethearts. And I
Ooh.
grew up in Dallas, so I know a lot of Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders from growing up. But there was this one cheerleader on there that really kind of struggled with her mental health. Her mom had been a cheerleader. Long story short, she had decided to not pursue the next season because you have to try out every year. And I really felt for her, but I kind of had this moment afterwards of like, this desire for a different kind of community and belonging. And I just sort of sat with it and put it out to the universe. And it was amazing what showed up for me really quickly. And once I got what could be defined as community or belonging, like I realized like, oh, that's not what I'm looking for at all. Like I'm not actually seeking more friends. I want a different kind of community in the business community, you know, in my entrepreneur groups versus I want to go do this men's group and do a retreat and build friendships. Like I wasn't looking for that. But it was interesting, like just to have that moment of reflection, to step back and to recognize that, okay, things will show up when you ask for them. And I got something and it was not what I really wanted, but to be able to pivot and not, I was able to say, no, I thank you for the offer, but I don't want to join that group. And that felt really grown up of me for some reason, like, and how quickly it happened.
Your ego wasn't involved, your heart was.
Right.
Yeah.
And they said, well, there might not be a space if you want to join at another time. And I thought, okay.
Fear, come on, join us. We're going to use fear tactic.
Yeah, no, like, okay, like I wish you the best, but no.
You know, what's funny is if you know yourself well, you do better. And the only way you know yourself well is to spend time alone, to reflect, and to be able to look at yourself compassionately. You know, I had a lot of anger toward my mother. And she did a lot of bad things and a lot of good things, but I couldn't see the good things because her bad things outweighed everything else in my mind. And I was an angry child and an angry, up to about 30 something, angry with my mom. And my dad said one day, he goes, Carm, you're going to have to forgive your mother. And I'm like, why? And he goes, it's not serving you well. He goes, you're pounding your feet too hard. And I'm like, laugh. My dad was always humorous. And with that, I had to go through putting her in the seat of compassion, the wheelchair, I call it. Because when you see somebody in the wheelchair, you want to wonder why are they there? What happened? So I had to look at my mother in a deep way and then look at my relationship with her in a deeper way. And I tell you what, when she passed away, we had healed the wounds. I love my mom, and I got to start seeing all the beauty she gave me. And I appreciate for her to wear that mental illness to make me a stronger person. And that's how I look at mental illness today. If you can conquer the challenges around the people who challenge you in mental illness, for the people who are caretakers and family members, if you can conquer it, you can find the beauty of every day of that person, even though it's challenging. My brothers, we kind of laugh, my family, there's 6 of us my one sister manages them wonderfully. But she gets caught on the daily basis of him being a little bit crazy, which he is. But it's okay because he has this beautiful inside soul we see. But it takes a lot sometimes to pull ourselves out of the pain of seeing him that way, to see his beauty.
Well, I just love how you've reflected that for us, because I mean, I think, you know, in the case of what you grew up with, that's a pretty extreme case for most people. Yeah. But, you know, the thing that I can observe, and having done the work I've done with NAMI for more than a decade now, the one emotion that is not really dealt with in any of our programs, that is the presiding emotion in any of those rooms, is grief.
Yeah.
And, you know, really being able to deal with the expectations that we have of our loved ones. Like, my kid's never going to go to college. They're never going to leave my house. They're never going to get married. I'm never going to be a grandparent, you know, and I think that path negates the wonderful gifts that you may get. I mean, it sounds like you got some amazing grace-filled closure with your mother before she passed. I grew up with a bipolar grandmother. Like, to listen to my mother, I'm the only person she ever loved. Like, and I had a really deep connection with my grandmother. Yeah. And, you know, like, I always felt like the voice that drove me forward when I went through my own breakdown is, it's my job to break this cycle and do this differently in a way that she couldn't, you know. And I touch on some of this in the book, and recognizing that most of us spend our adult lives undoing things that happened to us in the first 8-10 years of our lives.
Right.
And, you know, the thing that I think that we can get back into this headspace of, you know, how do I feel in this moment, is to ask yourself in a given moment, if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're upset, whatever the emotion is, how old do I feel?
Yeah.
Oh. If you ask yourself that.
Wait a minute. That was profound. Say that again.
If in those moments of crisis or struggle, asking yourself, how old do you feel?
Where because
I think most of us, when we are upset or angry, we don't feel our real age. We feel 8. We feel 13,
Yes.
you know,
Thank you.
and the beautiful thing about that, Carm, is when you can identify that age, you as a grown adult can go back and nurture that version of yourself. You can picture them, have a
Mhm.
conversation with them, give them
Amen.
what they needed. Like,
I
we
always tell
forget that we have the capacity to do that.
Yeah. I love that because I always tell my clients who are struggling, I go, your little girl needs to be nourished at this age, it feels like. And what I would suggest for you is to get that picture of that little girl at that age and write her a letter to tell her how you are today and how you are growing and what, well, look what happened to me. Look, I'm okay. I think,
Right.
and I love what you just said because that gave me that aha that I've never approached is what age do you feel that at really?
Well, and even I think a letter is a wonderful tool, but even being able to envision that version of
Mhm.
you and asking, can we talk? And just having a dialogue, asking
Mhm.
if you can hug them.
Mhm.
And again, I realize all of this is kind of in the imaginary world, but I mean, you
But
really
it's
can drop
perfect.
into that space,
It's perfect way to
you know?
reflect on it, and you can heal that child
Right.
through your mind and through your heart.
Because the truth is kids really only need a few things to feel safe, to
Mhm.
know that they're loved, and that somebody has their back.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah.
can tell them all of those things, like, I've got this, like, I've got your back, you are supported. Like, that in and of itself can go such a long way in healing those younger wounded versions of ourselves. And you may have to do it with multiple versions. I've done a lot of trauma work and a lot of energy healing work to reconnect with those pieces of myself. Like, I had a really traumatic childhood and a lot of bad things happened. And at 50 years old, it's not my I would be remiss to blame that on where I came from. Like, at some point, you
No.
have to take ownership for your
Yeah.
parents did the best they could, even if it wasn't good enough. And what are the responsibilities you're taking? And the fact of the matter is as a grown adult, you can parent those younger versions of yourself and give those kids the things that they needed.
I love that, Jason. I mean, I agree with you 100%. And the more we can live in the present, heal the past, and be in the be in the present moment, be in the present, and knowing, until you accept the past for what it was. Like I always tell my kids, you guys didn't come with handbooks. You guys bring your handbooks with you on this birth time? I didn't see it.
Right.
And I was not a perfect parent. And there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, wouldas I would have changed, knowing now. But also, I believe everything that happened was perfectly imperfect for that child to be perfect.
Right. Well, my next book, I can already tell you, will be about overcoming perfectionism. I mean, just that word. I mean, I have an entire initiative called Nobody's Perfect. Like, and I can tell you, I did a previous podcast with youth, and the one conversation or the one thread that ran through every conversation was this high need for perfectionism.
Oh
And I
yeah.
just peeled back from that and was like, okay, this isn't a kid problem. This is a people problem. We
Well,
all have this high need to be perfect, and it's bullshit.
well, funny thing is, my mother's gift, one of her gifts to me, she was a perfectionist. She was 165 IQ, perfectionary, spoke 5 languages, blah, blah, blah. I looked at her and I go, she wants to be perfect all time. I'm never going to be perfect. I
Which is
chose,
so exhausting.
I know, I chose the opposite. I'm going to be average and make mistakes. That's what I told myself as a kid. One day, I came in with a lot of weird knowledge. I don't know why,
Right.
but with that, to me, perfection, there is none. And that's a gift. I have that gift of not having to be, it's not perfect. Artists struggle
Well,
with that.
it certainly does make going through life less affected far easier.
Well, I feel like for me, I do my best I can. I accept whatever it is. And I live a little happier life, is what I feel like. And that's what I want. I don't want to be perfect. I don't want to be. I never want to be. I just want to make sure it's the best I can do at this present moment.
Well, and you mentioned something just there, that word happier. I think it's important to remind anybody that's listening, as trite as this sounds, happiness is a choice.
Absolutely.
And in any given moment, you can choose that or not. And that can be in spite of everything else going on externally. But
Mhm.
it is a choice that we can make on a case by case basis.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate talking to you today. You are a wealth of information.
Well, it's
I'm
a
so
pleasure.
glad you suffered and came back to this, because this is, without that suffering, you wouldn't be who you are, and you're a beautiful soul, is how I feel.
Thank
I can't wait for your next book. And I think Perfectly Imperfect. Let's just, but I am promoting this because I want people, I'm always helping people grow. And everybody has different ways of doing it. And this is a great helper for people who love books, who love to write, want to reflect. And so I recommend it to all my peeps out there. In my circle group, I always come with a new book a week, or every 2 weeks we have circle, and I always find books. So I recommended this 2 weeks ago to my group.
you. Awesome.
And
Thank you.
yeah, so I recommend it to the outside group too. And I really appreciate you taking time to talk to me today. I don't even think we even touched the iceberg on mental illness and in life, but I really feel there's a lot of good content in this podcast today. And I hope we can do it
I agree.
again, maybe
I
next
would
week.
love it. The
Yeah,
pleasure is mine, and you just let me know when and where if we want to do it again. Like
I love it.
I so appreciate you and the work you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, Jason, and I wish you well on your journey of life and helping others. And always, I know you're going to choose balance too, because you got to have fun along the way. That
I'm
F word
working
is
on it.
important to me.
I'm working on it. Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, don't forget. I'm going to get a T-shirt. That's been my motto since I played tennis, because I would get so mad at people who weren't having fun, and that's what we were supposed to be doing on a tennis court, was having fun. On that note, I want to say thank you. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and thank you for the listeners today too. And I'm going to say adios to everyone. Thank you.